Well, when it got down to it at the end, Kelly, it was Denny Hamlin, who did not. Fortunately, he has retired the phrase, I beat your favorite driver, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone. His dad told him to quit using it, thank goodness, and he did not, which is what he used the last time at Bristol. But he wins his second straight Bristol race. And Martin Truex Jr., who hates Bristol, matches his best career finish at Bristol, which happened like 14 years ago. So, I mean, it was the veterans that end up rising to the occasion.
Yeah, I mean, well, look in third place. It's Brad Keselowski, another veteran, right? I wasn't surprised at that at all, and I think that started to come out maybe a little bit more Sunday night when people really looked at the finishing order of maybe this was experience versus youth in regard to tire management, because Denny was one that said it. It reminded him of his background, and Brad Keselowski said the same thing. It reminded him of short track late model racing. Even some of the younger drivers actually said the same thing. I know Todd Gilliland compared it to a Myrtle Beach. John Hunter Nemechek compared it to a Pensacola, where he's raced before. So I think there is something to it that once drivers realized what was going on Sunday, it was probably easier for some of them versus others to adapt to it. The drivers who have never been in that position, because maybe they've only run NASCAR their entire lives, where it's just all out all the time and it seems like it's qualifying laps week after week and race after race, it probably took some time to figure out how hard am I supposed to be driving this race car right now. So I do kind of buy in a little bit to the youth versus experience argument from Sunday.
It sounds good to us, Pete, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we love that experience, those veterans, Brett. We do. But, you know, Kelly's point is right on. And it's interesting because I think the poster child for the antithesis of what she said might be Ty Gibbs, who had a really fast race car, led a lot of laps. Now, I know Ty ran the ARCA series and the Xfinity series, but he doesn't have a ton of late model experience coming up through the ranks. And a couple of times he smacked the wall over the weekend. You know, that kind of slowed him down. But it was all about exactly what Kelly just said, managing those tires and being there at the end. And, you know, not a bad day, again, as we just saw the week prior at Phoenix with Toyota. Being as good as they were. You mentioned Hamlin winning, Truex Jr. second. Ty Gibbs led a lot of laps as well. I think that combination to me is why you saw the drivers near the front of the field or at the front of the field when the checkered flag flew. I mean, Keselowski is a great story. We've been waiting for that. We know Brad and his teammate Chris Buescher have done very well at Bristol over the last couple of years, leading laps and winning races. But this was finally, I think, what we were waiting for Brad, and he went back to his experience and his veteran bag of tricks to come home with that third place finish.
I had to laugh talking to Kyle Larson after the race because, you know, he had the penalty on pit road during the race. And Kelly, he goes, I don't know how I finished fifth. I have no idea how I ended up here.
Yeah, I heard him say that as well. I think there was a lot Kyle was trying to digest Sunday between how their race had played out just with the penalty and then the tire wear and everything that was going on, that I think his immediate reaction afterwards, as he admitted today, was, I don't think I expressed myself well, because again, there was so much going on. As he was just trying to figure out, okay, I looked up at I'm top 5, like, you know, that race went by pretty crazy. But as he said, yeah, maybe he doesn't want to be doing that every week because it is on the extreme side, but he's kind of explained himself further, you know, this week, and saying that I still had fun. It was still a really good race, and I did like the tire wear. But again, he had one of the more hectic races. So I think he's still probably just, trying to digest how he came out the other side of it.
It was weird, Pete, because with that long green flag run at the end, I'm sitting there looking down at the end of the day and finishing order. And I'm looking like a Ryan Blaney, for instance, who had, he'd been way down in the 20s, and all of a sudden he was in the top 5. And then he finishes way down again. I'm going, what happened to these guys? I mean, it was like the finishing order, except for like Hamlin, and Truex was pretty high up most of the day. But I mean, it was like this finishing order showed nothing about how these guys had run all day long.
Yeah, it was very odd. And you mentioned Ryan Blaney. I mean, of the people I heard, after the race on the PRN broadcast or that came and talked on pit road, Blaney was one of the unhappy guys. He didn't like what was going on. He and Ross Chastain seemed to have something going on between the two of them that he sort of didn't want to talk about. But you're right, Brett. And I mean, again, it's funny. You talk about Kyle Larson. Not only did he get a 5th place finish, he was the last car in the lead lap. Think about that. We only had 5 cars in the lead lap on Sunday, and Kyle was able to persevere after the problem that he had on pit road. So That was another part of, I think, some of the entertainment factor that you didn't see somewhat the usual suspects in that top 10. John Nemechek with a good finish being in the top 10 as well. So, some guys liked it. It was interesting to hear what Kyle Larson said a couple of days later after he was able to sort of kind of think about what happened. But, a guy like Blaney still not happy after the great start to the season he had. Not so much Sunday there at Bristol.
Well, Pete, back in the old days, those days where racing was so great, you only had 5 guys on the lead lap. So the old-timers should have been happy.
This was it. This was to put you in a time machine, and we're going back to 1984 at Bristol Motor Speedway. You're exactly right. Here's the other thing out of all this, too, the other crazy stat. All but one car finished the race. After everything we just talked about, and only 5 cars on the lead lap, only Zane Smith was the only car that didn't get to the finish. So that was another oddity of that race we had on Sunday.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the tires, they were going down. They weren't blowing.
Yeah. And that's important to note.
Yeah. They were losing, they were scoring, but they weren't blowing.
Mm-hmm. Well, again,
which was interesting.
It all goes back to how each driver was managing it. If there were some that did go down to the cords, and it's because probably that driver was maybe pushing it a little harder that run than they should have been. There was other drivers that they wore their tires, but they didn't get to the cords, right? I think it all just goes back to how each individual driver was managing their tires and how hard they were pushing. But to your point, it is very important to note this week and make people understand the tires weren't failing. There's a difference between failing like they did at Indianapolis in 2008, which so many people were quick to try to jump to. That was tire failure, where you can only go, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 10 to 12 laps before they had to throw a caution because somebody was going to blow a tire. Bristol was tire wear, and it was, again, the tires were wearing, they were getting worn out, but they never blew unless, again, you severely overdrove the capability of your race car. So I think that is a very important thing that people need to understand.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Ty Gibbs, who is absolutely on a roll right now, and I think showing some of the potential that we expected that he might, maybe a little quicker than we expected. First, though, I want to talk about our O'Reilly Pit Reporters poll. Each week, we give you a chance to go to GoPRN.com and vote in the poll. And this week's question is, what did you think of the Bristol tire-saving competition? It was great. It was horrible. It was a bit extreme. There's your catchword. But moving in the right direction. Last week, we asked you, are you happy with the return to concrete for the Bristol Spring Race? 76% said yes. 18% said yes, but I wish there was a dirt race someplace. And only 6% said no. So there you go. So that you add that all up, and that was a lot of yeses.